Hello, I'm going to talk a little bit about my history here and what I've been up to so far in life. I was a computer programmer when I was pretty much a teenager, young teenager. I discovered computers when I was at primary school, when I was about 10 years old, must have been about 10 years old. First home computer I'd ever seen in the country, because that would have been about 1979 or something like that. I've got a bit of a sunset here, we might be able to see if I get the camera angle right. Probably not. Sun's setting over there anyway. The And so I bet on computers really early in life, and didn't make a lot of money for a while. But once I was in secondary school, I was teaching myself programming, because there's no lessons or university courses really for programming back then. And I was too young for university anyway. And it was just a fun hobby, something to do. I was doing fractals, computer graphics, very colourful pictures. Just kind of an art project really. And I ran a magazine before the internet, so there's no trace of it on the internet because it was before. I closed it down a few years after I opened it, before the internet started. In about 1989 I would have closed it. And I've still got the magazines, I'll show you sometime. And those got me quite a few contacts around the world. It was an international selling thing, and persuaded me that I didn't really need to work very hard at university or school really, because I knew programming, I knew how to do something useful. This was the future, and I went all in. On software, I always have done. And that was a good move. So I did university anyway later, and then I think in my first year of university I met a couple of business people, and they wanted me to help them obviously make software for their business, which I did. And one of them is a successful product which is still selling in different shapes and forms today, which is like 30 years later. So it's one of the longest running pieces of software in the world. And it's a small business, but it's a fun business. And that's kind of that was great, but it didn't make a lot of money back then, because when you're kind of 16 years old, you've got no clue about business. I look back at myself now and I think actually I did have a fairly good idea about business, but back then you got no confidence. It's very risky. You've got a lot of older people that really, really know about marketing. They really, really know about people, and all of this stuff. So I'd much rather work for other people, much safer. But it didn't make enough money doing that, because I wasn't greedy enough. Didn't make enough money, so I got a job which was making GPUs. So in your phone, you're probably watching this on, you've got a silicon chip in there called a GPU, also a CPU. And the GPU's graphics processing unit. And we invented those back in the early 1990s. There's a few companies around the world, including one I worked at in the UK called Videologic at the time, now Imagination Technologies. And I was the 7th person in the team hired to work on the 3D graphics, because they saw what I'd done at school in my spare time, and they were persuaded that I knew what I was doing, and I was persuaded that they also knew what they were doing, and this was the future. And no one knew about GPUs. There'd only been 2D graphics back then. 3D was a whole new concept. And now, of course, everyone takes for granted that they've got a very, very powerful GPU in their phone for playing games or that sort of thing, anything using 3D graphics. And also high performance AI, all that kind of thing, they all use GPUs now, and it's the hottest thing in the stock market as I'm talking to you now. One of the hottest things in the stock market are companies like Nvidia and other companies that are doing GPUs for artificial intelligence, because that's the real popular trend. And that is now what looks like, 30 years after I was helping to invent those things back in the day. Some people think of IT running very fast. It actually runs quite slowly, and it takes a very long time to get the potential out of a technology. And we're still developing it fast. It's still going very fast, and they're still speeding up every year and using massive server farms and that kind of thing. So, but that was intense, as you can imagine. Working on that was intense. We had a tech bubble in 2001 or 2000, and I knew that it was probably a good idea to get out or sell my stock options at that time. And I'd been given a lot of stock options because I'd taken a minimum wage kind of salary when I joined the business in order to have maximum stock options. That's a decision I made straight out of university, so I already knew how to play the stock market game and how to understand business and understand which was going to be a successful business. And I was absolutely right, because it was the most talked about business at the time in the UK in the tech stocks. And so that got me a massive amount of money, 6 figures, and that got me out into Thailand. Because I didn't want to carry on working all my life like that. It was exhausting, and I didn't really have much of a social life. I was single, lots of reasons to get out more, So I really got out. I took advice from some travelling friends, and decided on Thailand first, and was going to do a world tour. And to cut a very long story short, I ended up in Chiang Mai within 5 days of that travelling, and that since became one of the world's most popular, if not the world's most popular, digital nomad locations. I was spot on. I found it in 5 days in 2001 before anyone else was doing it, and it took about 10 years really for everyone else to start turning up. In 2010, I think, with 2011, when there was a lot of unemployment in the West, a lot of people thought they'd try something different. And so we had a big wave of people coming over then, and then it's never looked back. This is now a major way of doing work. Freelancing is skyrocketing. Even now it's accelerating very, very fast. How to work remotely online. So I was very, very early. I've had the huge advantage of a lot of head start on everything. So I've been able to see a lot of the trends emerge early on, and so I've got a good pattern recognition for what is going to be a successful trend, because I've had a habit of betting on them very early myself, and also seen them develop, and I see the sort of things that succeed and things that don't. And so now what I'm doing is I'm still running the online work, which is various different things, mostly a very small software business, and also investing, because obviously I knew what I was doing on the stock market. So I've got a very good history of predicting the best stock each year for the last half dozen years, and that's something that's gone up. If you put 10,000 on it 6 years ago, you'd have 130,000 now. So similar to Bitcoin, really. Well, that's done. So I'm trusting myself a bit more in investing now, and going a bit more heavy positioned on the things, because it more often than not it goes well. And doesn't always. You've got to know in business, doesn't always go well. You always got to have a little bit of a fallback if things don't work out. But you've also got to go in as much as you dare, because that's the reward, and that's what I did. I threw away my 20s age decade by doing that job, which is a very intense job in Imagination Technologies. Not much free time. I was living in London, which was nice, but not much free time. It was very nice. I mean, there's 3 parties every Saturday evening. It was quite good, but still wasn't really making me happy. So I needed to get out from that. And so I'm still an independent person, but I'm now back in the UK because I've had, since 2019, there's been a number of absolute disasters that I've had to deal with in life, and they've all happened in a very short space of time, in a couple of years. And hopefully, I haven't had one for more than a year now, so hopefully that's the end of that. But I'm still in the UK, and I'm not rushing out again. For a few reasons. And one of them is, at the end of the day, you've got the passport of the country you're born in, and it's hard to get a passport anywhere else. It's easy to get one in the West, but you've not really got much advantage if you've go to America, okay, you might get a bigger salary and this kind of thing. If you go to Europe, you're a different country, but it's the same formula as the UK. And it's only when you go east, like properly east, or to South America, somewhere like that, that the rules are totally different and life is totally different. And if you need a radical change to your life, it's only those places that are going to deliver that. And so, but the passport is the UK. I will never get a passport in Thailand. I can get a retirement visa in Thailand, and that's an option. But you never really know. You never really know how they're going to change the rules. And that was the first of my disasters, was in 2019, when they changed the visa rules in Thailand. And they've been progressively changing them, but that was a radical change. They said, now you can't stay long term on a tourist visa, that's over. And that was a radical change, because I was too young for the retirement visa back then. And so then I realised, I can't trust it. Unless you've got a passport, you can't trust. That's the thing with digital nomading. You can't stay there. You are nomads. You're travelling, right? You're forced to. There is no passport situation. So you always got to move. And so at the end of the day, I have to have a base in the UK, I think, as a fallback, if nothing else. Even if I don't use it much, I need a place in the UK. So that's what I'm sorting out and making solid at the moment. And that's going well. It's good fun, and I'm meeting a lot of interesting people and having all these kind of walks like this one here. I'm doing a little panoramic view. Still got the sun up, not quite setting yet. This is a Roman road. I'm just walking up to a Roman road. The hedge, in fact, if I go around again, the hedge behind me now, that's a Roman road, an ancient road. So there's a lot of interesting history around here. We'll see what happens, but it's, I don't choose a boring life, and there's going to be a lot of interesting things in the future, and there's certainly been a lot of interesting things in the past. So I'm keen to network and help people who are interested in this, and we'll see what happens, and help people get through it a lot faster than I did, because obviously I was first, so it's slow. You've got to learn everything, you've got no one to copy from. I had a few friends one friend who travelled the world very well before me, long before the internet. He had a very interesting method of doing that, on a low budget, on a low to no budget. He had a very interesting way of doing that, and so I took advice from him, and took a lot of advice from my Australian friends I met in London. They told me about Thailand, and they said I should go there on the way to Australia rather than just go to Australia, and that was a very good tip. And everything else is who you stumble across. The most unlikely people will help you. You'll be amazed how the most unlikely people, you've got to be open to these people. Like literally on today's walk, just coming here, I was walking with a friend who I've met many times, walking around the streets. His sort of style is like homeless style. He's not homeless, he's got a place, but his style is like heavy alcoholic. He's a bit older than me. But he walks and walks and walks, and that's why he survives, because he's got an enormous mileage he puts in. But what I found out today, walking around, I was just being friendly with him, because we're walking in the same direction, and it turns out that more than half of all people we walked past, even driving in the car, knew him and acknowledged him. And this is someone who in a city everyone would ignore, everyone would not want to know and want to avoid, and you'd be wondering if they're just going to beg for money, this kind of thing. And we have a nice little bridge here. I wonder if we can show that. There's a nice ancient little bridge there. This is used to be a farming area where people, peasants used to farm their little strips of land. But the thing is, because I was walking with him and everyone was acknowledging him and even having a short little polite chat with him, they were also being friendly with me because I was with him. So suddenly I've met like a dozen people that I would never have met otherwise. And my social network is growing really fast in this locality, by being prepared to be friendly with someone that in a lot of cities people would stay well away from and ignore as much as they possibly could. So this is what travelling's all about. It's people you meet, and you'd be unexpected ways they can be give you a lot of good information and things like that. Anyway, I'll leave it there because I don't want a long video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.